Hello, I wanted to do a video on this drawing that I did of Yggdrasil. I say everything in Spanish. I'm definitely going to mispronounce every Old Norse word in this video. Yeah, but I did this drawing to while away the quarantine just for fun with a little drawing group. And it turned out that it is almost like a map of Norse mythology, even though it was originally just supposed to be the tree. So let me show it to you. I think you'll enjoy it. So here is the drawing in its entirety. And I wanted to show it because some of the symbols that ended up in here show even more of a cosmology than Yggdrasil already does with its 9 worlds arranged around the tree. So I took that concept and I just kind of layered on it. Another thing is that I did this super intuitively. I'm not a Norse scholar, nor am I a practitioner of neo-pagan Norse stuff. It folds into my eclectic practice, but that's about it. But also I did it in kind of a meditative state, and I did it kind of as a form of divination, especially when I used these runes and drew them out to put them on the tree, not even knowing what they mean, but we'll get to that in a second. So yeah, this tree in general is the body of Odin. You know, we all know that Odin hung himself on Yggdrasil, the tree, for 9 days, and that's how he got the knowledge of the runes. And so not only do I have all of these runes, all of the runes of the Elder Futhark put onto the tree in various places in the bark, or maybe even in the leaves, but the tree itself is Odin. You see that the characteristic eye and sacrificed eye, which was sacrificed for the knowledge of the runes. You know, the way that we love to think of Odin as the knowledge-seeking all-father rather than the vindictive tyrant, of which he was both. So, yeah, I also like it because another aspect of Odin that is beautiful is that he is consciousness itself. So for me, it makes sense that this map of all existence, map of creation, which is a cosmology, is also just the body of Odin, which is, if we understand him as consciousness. So that's how I did that. One more word about these runes. I drew them out of a bag. I do tarot. I'm not a rune master, so I don't know how to read these runes, but I did pull them out in a divinatory way, and I would be interested if anyone knows how to read them, if you would tell me what they mean, because I really have a feeling that they're going to tell us things about the cosmology depending on where I drew them on the tree. The only one I looked up is this one, which turns out to be the rune most associated with Odin, most associated with the tree being the ash. So yeah, already on point. I would love to see how the rest of that turns out. This one. The other thing about my conception of the tree is, yeah, I just wanted to point out that, you know, we kind of have clouds up here and Midgard the way it's usually depicted. And I made Alfheim and Svartalfheim to be mushrooms. And I love that sort of mycelial network, intelligence of the mycelial world idea. So that kind of stemmed from that. Vanaheim is like a ghostly ectoplasm or something. And then Jotunheim and all of these, Helheim, all of these sort of gianty worlds, I made them as burls, like a burl that grows on a tree. So yeah, let me do a quick overview actually. We have Asgard, we have Midgard, land of the people. We have Elfheim, land of the elves. We have Svartalfheim, land of the dark elves. Really, they are dwarves in, English understanding. We have Vanaheim, which is land of the old gods, which is actually land of the Vanir. Those are the old gods. So Vanaheim, and then we have Jotunheim, land of the giants, Mustaheim, which I misspelled because I switched the names. I wish I had whiteout, but I don't. This is the fire giants. Niflheim and Helheim, which in some cases are somewhat connected, and that's the way I drew them. It's the ice giants and, the afterlife for us plebeian regular people who are not going to be in the fight for Ragnarok. And additionally, because God knows why, I added another Vanaheim and Elfheim. I think just because they're my favorite worlds. I wanted to make them in two different places. I wanted to make kind of like a etheric impression of each of them coming out closer to Asgard. Yeah, I don't know why. And so now also Freya is associated with Elfheim. So you can see this is certainly a personal interpretation. Okay, so then let's just start from the top. Up here in Asgard. In Asgard, I did a little Valhalla. I did a little Folkvang. Valhalla is the Hall of Warriors associated with Odin, and Folkvang associated with Freya, whom I did right over here. So, some fallen warriors go here, some fallen warriors go here, but they're all just training and dining in preparation for Ragnarok. So it's kind of like a holding pen for warriors who will be in the battle of the end of times when the world is destroyed and renewed again. So you're going to see in this themes of circular time, and that would be the first one, Ragnarok, and then the renewal of the world. So this is sort of preparation for that. And then sitting on Valhalla, or in front of it, I have Munin, one of Odin's ravens. His two ravens are Munin, who just has his feet on some skull heads because war, and Hugin, who flies out. Actually, I'm not sure in mythology which one it is that flies out and brings Odin back, sort of like an account of days. In either case, the significance of these are memory and thought. Love it. So there he is, flying out over Midgard, which brings us to Midgard. So Midgard is where we all live. This is the land of men and women, humans. If we look at the worlds of Norse mythology as parallel planes, that's sort of a modern and quantum physics concept that a lot of us can get our minds around a little bit. So then this would be the plane that we're on, and then maybe Asgard and Elfheim and all of these other worlds are on another plane. In any case, our plane of existence, 3D, I did a few landscapes in there, and the way they understand it is that it is wrapped around Yggdrasil, surrounded by an ocean, which is in turn surrounded by a great serpent. And that great serpent's name is Jormungand, which of all of these words that I mispronounce, I love this word, Jormungand. I don't know, it just sounds so giant-y. It's not a giant, it's a serpent. And he eats his own tail, and I have him wrapped around here, and kind of poking his body up in places. This is in fact an island. And where this island is located is where the Rainbow Bridge, I have it coming out of Odin's third eye, totally from my imagination, but it goes from Asgard to Midgard in mythology, and it is the bridge that the gods use to get from place to place, and which must be defended against the giants for Ragnarok, the end of times. But in this case, I'm interested to know why my rainbow bridge came from Odin's third eye, and then it went down onto this mysterious island, which also looks like it might be a little bit of the serpent body sticking up. Am I just getting confused with Celtic mythology? Quite possibly, or maybe I read something somewhere at some time, or intuited it. So before we move down, I wanted to show you Freya. I included Freya as the only goddess other than Odin because I just really like her. She represents all the things I happen to like best. I believe that her cats are supposed to be gray or blue, but they ended up being orange. She ended up being kind of like a sun chariot, but she does come from the morning star, and she drives her cat-drawn chariot across the sky, and she is love and war. So she is in a war chariot. She's got her shield with her, and she is wearing, I had to draw this so tiny, it's not really a great picture, but she is wearing her falcon cloak, which is part of her satyr sorcery skills. Beautiful, beloved Freya. So moving down, Alfheim, the Light Elves, there's not really a lot of interaction between them and all the other worlds, but I love an elf. Svartalfheim, there's quite a bit, and here I have pictured Thor's hammer Mjolnir. Pictured not in the, in the old Norse kind of way, not in the Marvel Comics way. A little bit about these colors that I chose. The green for Alfheim is for, like a spring green earth and lovely springy feelings. They're just a very elevated type of being. And Svartalfheim is very dark and deep and almost like the gnomes under the ground. But as a crystal person, I put all of these little crystals in here because they're also the keepers of all of these sort of secrets and elements and treasures as dwarves. So they have all these crystal little colors in there. So moving on to Vanaheim, as I said, this is the old gods, and not a whole lot is known about Vanaheim, except for that there was a truce and now they kind of mostly do their own thing. I drew them as ancestors, basically, according to, visions that I've had and my sort of idea of what the ancestors might look like out there in the ether waiting. And then we ended up having, there's actually a boar here too. It's hard to see, but this is a sleeping boar and a golden tree. Why did I draw a golden tree? First of all, I felt like I wanted to do sort of a archaic, prehistoric magical world where plants and animals and humanist beings, human-like beings, all sort of live in this magical harmony, because that's how I imagine the Vanaheim to be. Not all sort of wrapped up in ego like the gods of Asgard are. I'm sorry, the Vanir to be. And then also it turned out to be a golden tree. I don't know why. Is it the tree of knowledge? Is it the golden apples of Hesperides? It's just in my consciousness, and so that's where it came out. So, moving on to Jotunheim. First of all, you might notice little Loki sticking out his mischievous head, the great equalizer of the Aesir. love me some Loki. So I had to include him. There he is. And then I also included the Jotun serpent, Nidhogg, something like that, gnawing on the roots of Yggdrasil. There he is, gnawing away. Oh, he looks so satisfied with it too. He's just like, yum, 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 yum. I like that about him. Which also brings us to the Norns on this side. All of these things are a little bit associated with Jotunheim, or maybe with all these giant places. So this is land of the giants. These are the big chaotic forces that the gods and even the humans are constantly fighting against. But they're also part of what nourishes and upholds the world and the cosmology. So I don't know that it is a mistake that this Jotun serpent is a giant serpent, you know? It must be associated with all these giant realms. So at the same time that the serpent gnaws away at the roots of Yggdrasil, the well of Urd or Mimir or Hvergelmir. So there are 3 wells, and I actually just drew one. So anyway, supposedly there are 3, and we're just gonna call it 3 in 1 here. And at the same time as the serpent gnaws, Yggdrasil is being fed and nourished by the waters of one of these wells. I also have the Norns here, these 3 lovely ladies, which are the Norse fates, the Norns, and their names are Skuld, Verdandi, and Urd, meaning sort of like youth, the maiden, the mother, and the crone, basically. You have Skuld, what shall be, and Verdandi, what is coming into being, and Urd, what once was. And I like the idea that depending on how you view time, I'm actually not sure which one could, like, you could switch these so that the young one is what once was if you're looking from the perspective of being a bit older. So I like that. I just made that up. In my version, they're standing in the well, and I know that they do also drip water on the roots to revitalize Yggdrasil. And they also do the same thing that the Greeks' fates do, which is to measure and cut the thread of human life. So they're really tied into the concept of fate, these 3 lovely giantesses, which is also why they're by Jotunheim. So down here is Muspelheim, the giants of fire. Don't know too much more about them. And then down here is Niflheim and Helheim. Niflheim being the giants of ice, and Helheim being, where the goddess Hel lives, and where the afterworld is. It's not much like Christian hell. There are some painful places, but in the most part, it's just sort of like a gray, misty version of human life where people keep farming and traveling between villages and whatever humans do. So that's Helheim. And you can see I used the colors a bit to show what these places are. So that's my drawing of painting, I suppose, of Norse mythology. I think there's a lot of things that I haven't picked up in what I drew, some hidden truths. I also think that there's a lot that I missed that could be quite obvious to people who know anything about this stuff. I do, however, see, all of these opposing forces of chaos and creation, which at first glance, for instance, with the serpent and the well at the roots of Yggdrasil, they seem like opposing forces, but in reality, I think what you have is a circular force. And that's when you look at the whole and you see the way that everything kind of goes in the direction of Ragnarok and then back to the beginning. And that if you don't look at it like this, in fact, it's just a continuous circle. I see this other circular pattern with the norns that I spoke about. And I also somehow see a circular pattern between the Aesir, the Vanir, and the giants. And that those three things, with the Elfheim and Svartalfheim just kind of like being in the in-between worlds, as well as the people in Midgard. But these are kind of like almost a trinity of forces pulling in, just expressing themselves in ways that balance and ultimately, you know, create change. And that change being Ragnarok and the recreation of the world. I hope you enjoyed my painting. Like, subscribe. I am now putting out just kind of random videos on my channel about the health stuff and the magic stuff that I might be into at any particular time. So yeah, keep checking back in and I will keep doing what I do. Mwah.